Welcome to Impact, the Conversation, a podcast of the University of Minnesota's Institute on Community Integration that brings you strategies and stories advancing the inclusion of people with disabilities. Our guests are the authors of Impact, our long-running magazine that bridges the research to practice gap with professional and personal reflections on what matters most in disability equity today. I'm your host, Janet Stewart. Welcome, everybody. Today we're talking with Pauline Bosma and Oscar Hughes, two of the creators of Our Lives, Our Choices, Our Rights, an online guidebook from the Rainbow Support Group that is by and for people with intellectual and/or developmental disabilities who are also in the LGBTQ+ community. Pauline, can you get us started here and tell us a little bit about how and why you founded the support group? And then I'll ask a couple of other questions. But take us all the way back. How did you first get the idea to even start the Rainbow Support Group?
Well, I came out as trans a long time ago, and I wanted a safe environment for people with disability to go and talk about their issues, because when you go to a regular LGBT group or anything like that, and anybody that knows is in the regular LGBT community, the gays are in one corner, the lesbians are in another corner, the trans people are in another corner, and they're just not together. And I kind of said, hey, I want to get together and talk about the issues that we all are having the same issues in our own same way. But now I have 8 support groups, and I have groups in other states, like New York, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Vermont, Connecticut, Colorado, California, Portland, Oregon, Canada, and I even got a group in Australia. So we're connecting the world gradually, little by little.
That's amazing. And I also want to bring in your colleague, Oscar Hughes. Oscar actually just, I believe, completed his doctoral work in special education at Boston University's Wheelock College of Education and Human Development in Boston. Welcome, Oscar.
Yes. Hi. Thank you.
It's so great to have you here. And is that right? I think you just completed your studies. Is that correct?
I did, yes. Pauline and I actually did a research study together. That study was the basis of the Rainbow Guidebook we're going to talk to you about. And then I also defended my dissertation just 2 weeks ago.
How did this guidebook really get started? Oscar, you said that it was part of your dissertation work. What was the conversation early on?
Do you want me to take that one?
Yeah, you start us off, Pauline.
So I always wanted, the biggest thing for me is overall education in general. I wanted to have something that people can learn something about LGBT, IDD, but also learn about other things about sexuality, gender, healthy relationships, stuff like that. And, while Oscar was doing the study, the research study that he did and everything like that, we kind of heard these stories, and I asked a very important question. The question was, how can we help?
Ooh.
And
what do you mean by that? How can we help? What was behind that question? What did you mean by that?
It was just the way the word that when Oscar would read some of the stories that he got from the research, because he researched, I think it was 25 people, give or take, across the country and everything like that. And he asked them different questions, hypothetically, what kind of support would you like to get if you couldn't get support for being LGBT and IDD? What do you wish you had? What do you want? What would you like to do better and everything like that? And those are some of the questions that we wanted, more education, more support, and we wanted to learn something more in school and stuff like that. And we wanted support from our family and our friends and stuff like that. So that's where the words how can we help? What can we do? And it was like, kind of like it was spitballing through my head that we should do some kind of guidebook or something.
That's awesome. And so when you first had some of these ideas that you were talking about, were you envisioning then something that was talking to the IDD community, the people with disabilities, directly about their lives, or was it more about how you can help others to understand you better?
I think it was a little bit of both. I just want, the main thing is I wanted to give people a chance to understand that, like being LGBT and being IDD is hard enough, and we're trying to go through it. And we have different problems we go through, like I never learned how to read or write, so I can't read or I can't write too good. But that doesn't stop me from where my brain, developed differently, where I can think of ideas and think of things that is normally a bit differently. And that's what I did, is I learned a different format, but I understand it, so.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Oscar, can you take us through your research with the group and then how that developed into the guidebook?
Sure. Yeah. It started with the question Pauline mentioned. She was asking, how can we help? How can we support this community? And I was working as her assistant, and I was also a PhD student. And I just said, let's do a research study about that. So we agreed that we would gather some more people on the team, and I conducted some interviews, and then we met as a research team. We looked at the themes from the interviews. What were people struggling with? What were the supports that people were looking for? And we just started brainstorming, well, what can we do about this? Trying to answer Pauline's original question, what would be helpful? And Pauline always had this idea of wanting to create this guidebook for supporters. And the team was on board with that. And a lot of the findings from our interviews, people said there needs to be more visibility, more understanding, more education about their community. And so we started just writing a guidebook chapter by chapter. We would meet on Zoom and go through the findings and the quotes and put together the information that we had gathered into something we thought supporters and self-advocates would want to read.
There's a lot of talk in the field right now about participatory research, how important it is, nothing about us without us, and all of that. And, there are a lot of researchers there trying to bring meaningful voices of people with disabilities into their work. Here in this particular project, it seems like that is even more crucial, right? How do you feel about this whole trend in research? And were you thinking as you went into this project, you don't want to just give that lip service? You really want to be meaningful about those participatory influences?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the reason I entered this field, special education and also disability advocacy, is because I believe that people with disabilities are experts on their own lives, and they should be the ones who have the most input, the most power when it comes to research and decision making around disability and education. So I always wanted to do an inclusive research project. And Pauline's actually been on many different inclusive research projects and done lots of research. So when she asked this question, it just seemed like a great opportunity to work together on something. And especially, I think, around gender, sexuality, the LGBTQ plus community, right? There's this interaction of multiple identities. There's a lot of opportunity for researchers to get it wrong and not really understand what people's lives are really like. So we need experts who have a lived experience to guide that research.
And that's a perfect entry into my next question for Pauline. You, in your article, you wrote that the group, as you were working on, in the group on this project, you heard a lot of stories from people with disabilities who have been really rejected by their families when they started to express their sexuality and their gender. And I know that you've had some of your own personal experiences with this. What was that like for you?
For me, personally, it was a bit reminded, like when my mother found out and everything like that, she kind of like, this was early on, she kind of found out, she looked at me and she said, you would make an ugly looking woman, but then on my mother's, when she was dying, she looked at me and she said, I love you for who you are regardless. So that made me feel better knowing that my mother loved me for me and everything like that. And my siblings, I'm the youngest of 5, and my siblings, after my mother died, disowned me and everything like that. So I haven't talked to my siblings in about 18 years, something like that. But I got a lot of chosen family, like Oscar, and I got my wonderful support agency that supports me and everything like that. And they've been a big ally for me and everything like that. So I got a lot of support, people that love me and everything like that. And that's what keeps me going, is that I have this family that chose me and I chose them. So, and that makes me feel good. And knowing, like when I hear the stories about people and everything like that, it makes my heart go out to them, and it makes me want to, help them more and educate them more, and don't worry, you're not going through this alone. You might be going through it in a different format, but you're not going through it alone. We're all here to support each other.
That's fabulous. And you were actually getting ready for the show. You were telling me some stories of some of that work you've done, going to different conferences and different opportunities to kind of tell this story. And you shared with me, one anecdote I remember when you were setting up for a show, or you had someone kind of come by the table and ask a question. Can you share that story with me?
I'm trying to think of what the question.
It was the one when someone came up to a table and you had a condom on the table.
Oh yeah. It was a self-advocacy group and everything like that, and I had a bowl of condoms at the self-advocacy conference, and a self-advocate came up to me and asked me, what's this? And I said, that's a condom to have safe sex with. And when I said that, the people around my table literally went dead silent. And then the guy said, well, I don't know how to use one. And I said, that would be a really good workshop. And then it went even more deadly silent. And I got stares from everybody in the room that I was in, because I was at my table and people are just staring me down like I said the wrong thing. So, and that made me realize that when you're working on something, you gotta realize that there are some things you can do that the audience is ready for, and then there's other things you gotta hold back a little bit and gradually bring it in, but you can't bring it in all at once because people are going to be overwhelmed. And I've been gradually bringing in the words, gender or sexuality and stuff like that, but I haven't really totally pushed it on them or saying hey, you gotta know that I'm saying hey, we're gonna do this gradually, a little bit at a time, a little bit learning, a little bit, so.
And there you've really hit on an issue that crosses in and out of disability, right? Because as Americans, we have kind of a rep of being a little, old-fashioned or a little reserved about all of these topics, whether it's intersects with disability or not. Oscar, is that a challenge in doing some of this work from your perspective?
I think it's changing. It's improving. We have people like Pauline who are getting these conversations started and keeping them going. I certainly found when I was a special education teacher that sexuality education was really limited. I had students with disabilities whose gender or sexual identity was outside of the expectations or the heterosexual norms. And that was really difficult for parents and teachers to wrap their head around, that students with disabilities could be LGBTQ plus as well. And fortunately, in this research, we're here in Massachusetts, and Pauline has her rainbow groups, which have a lot of support. So it's been really positive to connect with a community of folks who are also interested in this work. And willing to have these conversations, but we still need to expand that and provide more support and more education on gender and sexuality for sure.
Well, and that's just it. The Rainbow Guidebook is fantastic. That we had in the magazine a few other examples of programs that are doing a lot of work in this area. And so, the one thing we don't want to do is create this impression that there's just a ton of resources out there, because as you point out, a lot of states are curtailing sexuality education in general, not just LGBTQ or for people with disabilities. And so there is a dearth of this, correct?
Yes, for sure. It's still a taboo topic, unfortunately. And I think we're just seeing now more and more people who are willing to even consider what does it mean to support gender and sexual expression. We were just at a conference last week, and there were a few sessions and a few people who are really passionate about this topic and trying to do this work. But I think it's really new, and definitely there's a lot more to do.
And Pauline was actually mentioning, I think you're talking about the TASH conference, is that right? Pauline, what is the TASH conference, and how did it intersect with some of the work that you've done?
People that are, like self-advocates and that have a disability that are at that call. But it's mainly a lot more professionals. I mean, Oscar can give more detail about it than I can.
And did you have a booth at the conference, or did you talk to people about the guidebook there?
We did both. We talked about the guidebook, and we also had a table, and then we did a workshop. What was our first workshop on? I forgot again.
Yeah, Pauline and I and Nora, the third author on the article, had two sessions. The first one was about scenarios on how to support gender and sexual self-determination. So Pauline and Nora had examples of real life scenarios where people with disabilities were denied their gender or sexual self-expression. And we asked the audience, what are some ways that we could better promote people to express who they are and support them to express who they are. We took a lot of notes on people's ideas about that. That had a great turnout.
Can you give me a for instance on that? What were some of the examples of how their self-determination had been impacted?
Sure. Yeah. I think one of the scenarios was a person, and this is based on a true story of someone we heard from. They lived at a group home and they wanted to wear dresses, but their staff said, "Oh, you're a man, so you have to wear men's clothes," and would just go to the men's section and buy the men's clothes. And so we asked, well, how could this person be supported to wear what they want to wear and express who they are? People shared a lot of examples. One was just arguing that people should be able to choose what they wear and to pick out the clothes that they wear. Some people felt that this person should have new staff who are more supportive and understanding. Pauline talked about, if there was a human rights officer, you could report this as a violation of your human rights. So just thinking through when these situations come up, how can we advocate for people to be who they are?
Pauline, in your own experience, I know you had some negative feedback from your immediate family, but as you started to more fully express who you were as a woman, were there other critical moments, key times when people either denied support to you or gave you support that helped you in making that decision to evolve more fully into who you really were?
Well, I mean, when I first in the state of Massachusetts, we have a state agency that's called the Department of Developmental Service, which services all the people with disability in the state of Massachusetts. And my local office and everything like that, I told them what I was and everything like that. I mean, they've known me for a long time. I told them what I was and everything like that, and the area director and the boss and everything like that, and my statewide support person said, well, we want to know about it, but technically we don't want to know about it. So they're basically saying, like, keep it in the closet, but don't open the door yet. And I looked at them and I said, I said, door's already open and I'm going to open it. I don't care.
So that was your first response to that. You by that point, you had enough wherewithal or enough of your own confidence to sort of laugh at that and realize that that wasn't something that was going to hold you back.
No, because I mean, it's to me, it's just a little thing that I did just to relieve my stress in my brain. It's like there was like a story where I was working for a part-time for a small agency, and I was there, and I was in my little, because I was a custodian, so I would clean all the officers and everything like that. So I was in my little, closet, right? And my supervisor comes in and he goes, can you get out of the closet? And I looked at him and I jokingly said, I'm already out of the closet. And he just looked at me and he just said, okay, I'm walking away. I'm not saying nothing. And he got the joke, but I'm going like, okay, bye, see you later. But he got the joke because he was telling me to get out of the closet. I said, well, I'm already out of the closet. I mean, hypothetically, and I'm going like, well, I got to make a joke out of it because, but I mean, it was funny to me because I'm just like, yeah, well, so you really can't stop it.
There you go. That's awesome. And so you were sharing a little earlier, you were sharing some numbers about the guidebook. Can you tell me a little about that?
Yeah, we launched the guidebook about 7 months ago, and right now we're over around 30,000 people that have looked at the guidebook, and and we have some like a couple colleges using it in their college courses. We have a group and everything like that. And I think, do we have a school, like an elementary school or a middle school using it or something? I think.
Yeah, we've started getting some messages from people sharing how they've used it. One of them, the most recent, was a school psychologist, I think at a high school in New York, who said she has some students she works with who have disabilities, who are LGBTQ, and they sat down and looked at the guidebook together and talked about students' goals and identity. And it's cool to hear how people are using it.
That's really critical because several articles in the issue talked about how few resources really are available in schools. So how did you crack that market, Oscar? Did you have a dissemination plan? How did you do that?
Well, we're certainly still trying to get it out there. That's one of the reasons we wrote this magazine article and came on this podcast. But we just started by sharing it with some listservs I happen to be on as a PhD student. We posted it on a website for the Rainbow support groups. We've shared it on social media as best we could. So we're still trying to figure out how best to get it out there. But I think a few state agencies and service providers have shared it with their staff. That's a big way that it's gotten out there. The state of Rhode Island, California, a couple different state developmental disability services agencies have shared it with their staff or on their website, things like that.
And I want to ask each of you before we close, is there one moment that really stands out for you in this work that, wow, that's the take home for you?
In terms of the research project, there was a moment on the team where we were talking about some struggles that people were going through and the hardships of the participants. And it was really kind of bringing us down. And so we switched and looked at what did people say they were proud of and what made them happy. And we ended up putting a lot of that data in the guidebook. Why are people happy to be LGBTQ+? What do they like about themselves? Where do they find their joy? And I think we really need that right now. There's so much negative news and people do struggle, but people can also be happy and proud and live a wonderful LGBTQ+ life. Even when it's hard, it can be wonderful. So I think sharing those stories of joy is really powerful. And I'm really glad that we were able to do that.
What a great thought, because certainly it's so important to bring out discrimination and, the things that we have to call attention to. But part of that is the joy, right? Pauline, how about for you? Was there a moment as you were going through all of this with your colleagues that was an aha moment about, oh yeah, this part of it is going to be the most useful to people with disabilities, or this is going to really resonate with people who are supporting people with disability? Was there one part of it that just really you thought, aha, this is good stuff?
Well, I mean, when we got it all done, that was a really good moment and everything like that. And another really good moment for me was when Oscar put it in his dissertation to get his doctor's degree and everything like that. You know, I made I like to put things in perspective and real and everything like that. And you know, I said, when I started my Rainbow Support Group, 19 years ago, next year will be my 20th anniversary and everything like that. I said, I started 19 years ago, and I looked at, where I'm sitting there, I'm talking to other people in the chair, and I said, my baby is off to college, and now my baby has got a doctor's degree and going out in the world because she's literally like living within the system. And it just, it brought a tear to my eye knowing that, when I leave this earth, there's a part of me that's going to be left behind for a long, long time for many people to use. And that is just so happy for me to have that and to be like that there. That's just like really proud of me. It's like, I'm really happy for everything that's been coming true and been happening and everything like that. So,
wow, that's amazing. And I just love that you shared that with us because, that's one of the things we talked early on about is, the whole nothing about us without us, and how do you really get at research that's meaningful? And boy, you can't do any better than what you just said, right? Anything I haven't asked about, recollections from the experience, either of writing the article for the magazine or in putting the guidebook together? Anything we haven't touched on? Oscar, from you, and then we'll finish with Pauline.
Just add that if you're doing research or any kind of project or programming that's trying to support or to serve people with disabilities have to be on the team. Collecting the data, asking the questions, planning the programming, whatever it is, we need their insight. If we're going to try to do the right thing and do it well, we need their insight.
Awesome. And how about for you, Pauline? Anything that we haven't talked about that has been on your mind with all of this?
I think I'm just looking forward to the, the future and see what's going to happen with the next, things with the guidebook, but also where, me and Oscar are going to be starting our own training company sometime next year or something like that. So that should be really interesting to see how that's going to go. And it's, so it should be good. But, we're going to add some new things to the guide booklet as we go along.
That's really exciting. And I can't wait to see where you take this effort, because it's going to be really exciting to see how this evolves and really where it goes from here. All right. Thanks again. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks for joining the conversation. If you'd like to reproduce all or part of this podcast, please email icipub@umn.edu.
Our show is co-produced at the University of Minnesota's Institute on Community Integration by Impact Managing Editor Janet Stewart and ICI Media Producer Pete McCauley. Skylar Mihailov is our editor. Graphic designers are Connie Burkhart and Sarah Kurtner. For more information on the Institute and all of our products and projects, please visit ici.umn.edu.